One for coming. Apologize for the late hour. We had to do shifting twice today with the schedule as unstable as it was and the add-ons. So 4 o'clock is good in respect. We're not having to be in a hurry to vacate the room, but we thank you for indulging us at such a late hour. If you just join me, I'd like to open the word of prayer. Merciful God, we thank you for this day and the blessings that you have bestowed upon us. We ask your blessings upon every family represented in this room. Be with this committee, give it the wisdom and the courage that the action taken here today would be for the betterment of our great state. We petition this in your name. Amen. Thank you. All right, our first order of business, House Bill 940.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, committee members. So I bring before you today House Bill 940. Its LC is 391843ER. This is a Department of Driver Services agency bill, and the intent here is to provide them with a little bit of flexibility in issuing driver's licenses where so this relates to last year's House Bill 136 that was carried by Representative Carter. And under House Bill 136, there was a change in the process for how a temporary driver's license was issued. And so that law read that the department shall physically mark any surrendered license or permit and that they shall issue a receipt. And so the idea was that when you renewed your driver's license, they would mark your old license, they would give you a receipt, and you would use that receipt to continue driving, and you would use your marked old card until you received the new in the mail. That process required a new vendor, and that new vendor, the change was a little optimistic in meeting a July 1 deadline. And so they need a little bit of flexibility and have requested that we change underlines in 4 locations the word shall to the word may to allow them to continue operating as they have been in issuing a temporary paper permit or license. And then once the new vendor's in place, they would go to this new process, but that won't occur by July 1. So that's the intent of the bill.
All right. Thank you. So we're assuming that on line 13 is one change, line 16,
Yes, sir, and then
line 30, and line 34.
Yeah, 33 and 34. So I guess
34,
there's
yeah.
one more.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Any questions from the committee? All right. Okay. Representative?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just like to ask the representative, so you're changing it from shall to may, and my only concern is that, and the reason we were doing that is because it was just overabundance of folks, that you could not give someone a receipt or.
So the issue was that the new vendor that would do the marking and issuing that receipt it won't be in place by the July 1 when this would be effective. So they wouldn't be able to follow the laws that reads now that would require them to physically mark the card. They won't have the vendor in place to do that.
Mr. Chairman, can I just follow up? My only little question is so will they ever get a receipt? Will they ever,
Yeah, they will. The vendor, they're in the contract process, both with the existing vendor and the new vendor, and the department is eager to have that new process in place, but we don't have a date certain when that will occur. But they're working on it, and they're eager to make it happen. So the change will happen. They just need a little flexibility in the meantime, as they can't say exactly when.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Representative. Chairman Barr.
Appreciate you bringing this bill. If this body passes it and the Senate passes it, when would this take effect?
That's a great question. I would It would need to be by July 1st, I suppose.
I appreciate you bringing this bill. It's a gotcha question for a freshman. Appreciate you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Representative Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question. Why is a vendor issue required to mark the expired driver's license? That surprised me.
Sure, me too, and Mike or Shavonda may have a better answer, but my understanding is they don't want, we could probably mark them in a different way, but just to create another, they have a vendor that as part of that process would do that, and that vendor's not contracted yet.
Mr. Chairman, just a quick follow-up. I guess I envisioned a hole punch. I mean,
Right.
you know, that's
Right.
what I envisioned, that we just punch a hole in the driver's license as some indication that it was no longer the
Valid.
current valid license
Yeah.
versus expending any kind of money to go through that process. Because as I recall, it was more just because people wanted to kind of hang on to their old driver's license.
Go ahead, Mike, please. Yeah, here.
Would you identify yourself, please, Mike?
Absolutely. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. My name is Mike Mitchell. I'm with the Department of Driver Services, and I just want to give a little bit of historical background on this particular issue. So if for those of you that have had your license renewed probably within the last 5-10 years, you know that the process involves coming to DDS. If you're eligible, you get your license renewed. The examiner takes away your current license or the license that you're trying to replace or renew. You're issued a temporary license, which is a paper document on a secure form, and the old license is kept by DDS and ultimately destroyed. The issue that we had that came up a couple of years ago is we found out that a lot of customers were not able to use this temporary license that we issue today to get through TSA. We had some customers that could not get through TSA here in Atlanta. Some customers got through TSA, got out of state, couldn't get through TSA to get back to Georgia. So we had to figure out a way that we could address that particular issue because TSA was not recognizing the temporary license. So we reached out to a lot of states, and they told us that their process involved letting customers keep the old driver's license but issuing them a receipt instead of this temporary driver's license. But they would mark the old card in some way. They may punch it invalid, they may punch it expired, they may just punch a hole in it. TSA, ironically, will accept an expired driver's license that has been marked up to a year expired, provided that that card is not over a year expired. They will accept that at the security checkpoints. So our intent was, and as Representative Cobble just said, we were a little overly optimistic in House Bill 136 last year, thinking that we would have a new card vendor in place by July 1st, so we could start letting customers keep the old card, issuing this receipt instead of the temporary. But that didn't happen. So we've got to basically continue business as usual until the new vendor is in place. And we hope that is sooner rather than later, but we're not going to be able to meet the July 1st, 2018.
So it wasn't a vendor to mark the card. You're replacing vendors that we're using for the actual issuance of the standard driver's license?
Correct.
Okay.
We will be
Okay.
moving away from the temporary driver's license
Okay.
that we issue today to a
Very good.
receipt, which will accompany the new driver's license. So hopefully that makes sense.
Thank you.
Chairman Powell.
Thank you. To the author of the bill, this is your first bill?
Yes, sir.
You know, take it from me, it's a pretty good bill. Even more important, it's in Title 40. And this bill would look a lot better with a few other issues tacked onto it. Would the author of this bill have any problems that somewhere in the next 17 days that this bill might come back in a whole different form than you see? Would the author have any objections to a lot of good legislation being put on this bill?
I may. I'd have to take them under consideration.
Close enough.
Thank you, Chairman Powell. Thank you, Representative. Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Thank you.
This time, Chair will entertain a motion.
So moved. Second.
Motion second to move. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. Okay. Our next bill will be House Bill 401 by Chairman Powell.
Thank you, committee members and Mr. Chairman. Representative Clark couldn't be here, asked me would I help him with this bill today. Same bill that we passed last year, got held up in the rules, deals with motorcycles and the use of the earpieces and all that. It basically says that these folks that are riding motorcycles, they can use those for where they can hear the GPS instead of having to look at a telephone.
Any questions from the committee? We do have number 7. Representative Prince.
Chairman Power, are we talking just motorcycles here or motor vehicles? And the reason I asked, say again?
Motorcycles.
Okay, I'm looking at that. I guess your line 11 saying operating a motor vehicle.
15 is different motorcycle.
Okay. So technically, right now, it's I just want to make sure I'm clear. It's illegal to wear headsets when we're driving a vehicle.
It is.
And now we're adding it to
Right.
motorcycles to the group.
Correct.
All right, thank you. Okay.
All right. Now the proper time, Chairman Barr.
Make a motion to pass.
Second.
Motion second. No further discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Same sign. We have a motion to do pass, fully voted on. Thank you. All right, House Bill 804. Representative Clark.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I have House Bill 804. It's, as Representative Teasley would say, it's a simple little bill. It's a one-pager, my favorite type. And if it's on line 11, currently in Georgia code, dealing with window tinting, private investigators and security has an exemption that reads operated in the course of business. This bill changes it to say any vehicle owned or operated by somebody licensed in this code section. And the reason being is most of these people use their personal vehicles, and they're running into a lot of tickets because it's their personal vehicles that they're using for as their business vehicle as well. So this is a bill that the board that oversees and regulates the private investigators and private security firms brought to us while we were in public safety. They mentioned this was something that they were having problems with throughout the state, and so here's the bill, and I would take any questions.
Okay. We have any questions from the committee? Number 7. Representative Prince.
Now, understand this private, for lack of better, private detectives. You say they already own their vehicles.
A lot of them are using their private
And they-
vehicles that they own.
To operate
Yes.
during the course of business. So basically, we're saying they can tint their windows and use their car for business or play.
That's what this bill would allow, yes, sir.
So when they're not working, they still can.
If they're licensed under this code section, if they own or operate the vehicle, if it's owned or operated by somebody who's licensed, this exemption that's currently in code would apply to them.
Any other questions? I have one. So this would be as many vehicles as they have.
Correct, yes, sir. There's no limitation on the number of vehicles that this business could have.
So if they're
Now,
not
and
u-
if they're large enough that they have a fleet, then I'm sure that they have business cars as well, but most of them are just self-employed, licensed, working for themselves types of businesses.
in the conduction of their business.
Yes, sir.
So if they have a 16-year-old driver that decides to take daddy's car out,
This would apply to them too, yes, sir, or their wife, yes, sir. But this is what the board, under the Secretary of State, that this is how they saw the ability to resolve the issues that they're having with a lot of their members getting tickets and their, it's their bill.
number 14, Representative Jones.
Yes, I think we're a little bit confused about who can be driving these darker tinted vehicles and be legal. Line 11 says operated by a person licensed or registered. And if it was the teenage child or the spouse, they're not the licensed individual. And I would think our intent would be just to protect the private detective, not kids that are driving overly tinted vehicles.
And I would agree, that is the intent, but I think as the way it reads when it says owned or operated, so if the vehicle's owned by somebody who's licensed and their child is, their 18-year-old child, 16-year-old child was driving, then because that car is owned by somebody, so I mean, I would be open to changes from the committee on this, but to make sure that that intent is being addressed properly. But when it says or,
Chairman Battles.
This brings me to a point where there's nothing to identify that this car or vehicle is a special car for some kind of private detective or private service. It seems like the law enforcement are going to continually to pull these vehicles over. It seems like that there needs to be something in addition. It doesn't have to be a tag that says private investigator or anything like that. But that it has something to that triggers the law enforcement to say, okay, we understand that this is a vehicle that is used for a purpose that is legal.
and they had thought about some kind of decal, putting a decal on the back window.
Right.
But that ran into some scrutiny because a lot of times these private investigators might be doing a stakeout, for lack of a better word that comes to my mind right now. And, they don't need to be giving away their identity as they're trying to perform surveillance for reasons. So that was when that idea got kind of, so.
Yeah.
I mean, I understand where you're coming from with that too, but so if a person was pulled over and they show that they have the private investigator's license, they could be on their merry way. But
Or their own surveillance and they get stopped, they have a police officer pull up behind them. I don't know how you would fix that. It just sounds like there might be a lot of unintentional consequences to operating a vehicle that they know they're going to get attention to. And it might even cause them to give away their intent to be a private investigator. I know that, Oh, I thought you was giving me some advice. I was trying to. It's a question. I don't know the answer to it, but it just seems like that. I have no problem with the bill. If they want to keep up, if they want to deal with all the harassment of the police stopping them, so be it. But that was just something that I was interested in.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chairman Barrow. Chairman Caldwell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think I can correct this bill if y'all want me to do so. However, what it would do, if my amendment that I'm gonna offer here momentarily to change one word, but it would stop anybody else from driving that car, like you say, his children or his wife or her husband or child, if it's a female. In line 10, if you change any vehicle owned and operated instead of or, then they have to own it and operate it, and that will correct your bill. But at the same time, it would also keep someone else, as you say, the child or the spouse or the next door neighbor from driving it, because if they did, they'd still get a ticket. So the person could only use it themselves, but that would keep your bill alive if you are amenable to that, and if the chairman would let me amend it.
I would definitely be amendable, and some of the people who are supporting this legislation have agreed to that as well, because I too, like you, would think that honestly, I would love to be able to tell my wife, you can't drive my truck because you'll get a ticket. So
Well, that's between you and your wife. I ain't gonna get into that.
Go ahead, Chairman Caldwell.
Mr. Chairman, I would offer an amendment on line 11. It says any vehicle owned, and the word or, strike the word or and insert the word and it would then say any vehicle owned and operated. So the person would have to own it and also be the actual operator to be exempt under the provision. If anybody else then drove, they'd get a ticket.
yes, sir.
I would offer that as an amendment.
Have a
Mr.
motion
Chairman.
have a motion and a second. All in favor of the amendment, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, now do we have a motion on the bill as amended?
Do pass.
Motion do pass, second. Motion second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Thank you, Mr.
Representative
Chairman
Clark,
and committee.
Thank you. 898, Representative, who's handling this? Oh.
I think Representative
Representative Powell.
this is the fleet bill. Where's Red Dot? Oh, he took it back.
Just whatever's convenient for you, son. You are.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Bring DHB 898, fairly simple bill. This is something we worked with Revenue Enterprise, rental cars, and UPS worked with us last year, worked with the Revenue Department.
Mr. Chairman, I'm sorry.
Chairman.
Will you press your button? Now try it. There we go.
There you go.
All right.
You just turned it off again. You just turned it off again.
Really? All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Committee bring DHB 898. This is a fleet tag bill. Last year, over the last couple of years, been working with some of our bigger companies in Georgia, Enterprise, Car Rental, and UPS. And because of just quite frankly, just an awful lot of busy work about getting their tags and all of that to their various vehicles, they worked with the Revenue Department. And last year, they had created some rules and regs over there, but still, we need this bill to allow the Department of Revenue to actually authorize a fleet tag. And this would be where they could get all the flags and tags and send them out to the vehicles.
All right.
And I'm sure there'll be a whole lot of other companies in the state of Georgia that has over 100. I'm sorry, we're going from 1,000 to 100. So
Okay.
if a company's got over 100 in their fleet, And this would make life a whole lot easier for them.
Any questions from the committee? Number 11.
Mr.
Representative
Chairman,
McLean.
Mr. Chairman, yes, I just only have one on line 37. Representative Powell, Chairman Powell, it went from $200 to $50 for the initial enrollment fee. Was there a reason for that? On line
Let's see.
37?
Line 37, that was dropped from 200 to 50. Just a pro-business move because that's the fleet enrollment fee.
Yeah. I can tell you.
That all Representative McLean?
I mean, I just wonder why, and I guess it was answered thoroughly.
Any other questions? What line?
Hello. Oh, okay. Back a couple of years ago, when Mercedes first came to Georgia, it was in another piece of legislation out of Ways and Means that gave them that somewhat fleet $50 tag for those. And Commissioner, remember that in House Bill 202. And I believe that's probably where that came from, is to get in line with what we've already done and was in legislation or had been codified, and just getting it more in line. Was that where that pretty much came from?
If that's what you want to believe, and that's where it came
Mr. Chairman, that's an answer.
I just want to make y'all feel good on this late afternoon.
What's called a volume discount, right?
That's fine.
Right. Any further questions? Do we have a motion?
Move.
Motion moving second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. House Bill 773.
Mr. Chairman and ladies and gentlemen, I bring to you House Bill 773, and this is a bill, we call it the tow bill, and what we've experienced is if we've had a lot of people that's in the towing business that's got cars that they can't get rid of. It may be a title pond situation, or the owners of the vehicles just won't come pick them up. If there's a lien against them, then it even serves as more of a problem, because those people are charging by the day for those vehicles to be on their lots. So what we've done, we've come up with a bill here, and it's a minor bill by any means, but and I'll kind of go through it with you. And I've got somebody here. I've got Ms. Paige Porter with the Towing and Recovery Association here to help answer any questions that y'all may have with this, because it is kind of a lengthy bill. But basically, what we've done is broke it down. If you look on page 1. Section 40-11-1, it just clarifies the definitions for what a trailer is, an authorized entity and the third-party access to the Department of Motor Vehicle Records. Section 4011-2, which is on page 2, combines the language of the first, second paragraph to make more sense. It clarifies the tow company, and the tow company owner and lien holder must be informed from the Department of Motor Vehicles. And the Department of Revenue must approve, or a third party that the Department of Revenue approves sources in order to send these out. The tow companies must be notified through certified mail, and the lien to the lien holder and the owner of the abandoned vehicle clarifies that the owner and the lien holder can request a hearing in court. And they can do that now. It's just we're kind of clarifying that in the language. 40-11-3 hasn't really changed anything on this bill. It's pretty much going to stay the same. Then the other section there, 40-11-4 on page 8, It provides the towers a lien against the vehicle for lawful charges that accrue, and it clarifies that the sellers of the abandoned vehicle can recover all costs, including auction costs. Provides that a tow provider can acquire the lien application through Department of Revenue affidavit as well as through the competent court. And what that basically broke down to is, like I said earlier, the tow people are charging per day for that vehicle to sit there, and this is a way for them to recover their money back. And then if they do sell the vehicle, then that money could go to the lien holder to settle that. I think I told you that right. Let's see, provides, in section 5, it provides for the process which is abandoned vehicle will be sold if not reclaimed. There's no hearing request included in the notification to the owner. Provides that the process is, if there is a hearing requested. Section 6 on page 10 shows that you can sell the car upon order of the court or authorization from the Department of Revenue. Section 7, the purchaser shall receive a copy of the court order or the authorization of such sale. And then on page 11, last but not least, section 8, the court or Department of Revenue retain the overage from the sale and distribute them out to the seller after 12 months. Only the court is allowed to do it now, so this right here will give another avenue for that if the Department of Revenue agrees to go along with this. Provides for the requirements of the towers to submit documentation to the Department of Revenue to facilitate the convenience of the ownership. And that's all that confusing stuff is kind of what this bill does. And I know there's some questions, so I'll go ahead and open it up for that.
You said there was someone to speak on behalf of?
Yes, Ms. Paige Porter. She can really answer the questions on this.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Paige Porter with ATO Incorporated. This is Chris Wetchell. He's with Marietta Wrecker, and we're two large towing services in the state of Georgia, and we also represent the Towing Association, Towing and Recovery Association of Georgia. And overall, this legislation is being proposed to clarify and streamline the abandonment process to be efficient in notifying vehicle owners and all financial parties. Today, the statute has no standardization. So it's interpreted by 159 chief magistrates as well as 346 magistrate judges throughout the state. So each judge or each court or county has their own interpretation. So if we move it under the Department of Revenue, there is that standardization, which avoids any kind of varying enforcement from county to county. Today, there's a lot of local law enforcement agencies that are not providing owner information to the towing companies in a timely manner. So working with the Department of Revenue, that would allow third-party relationships or contract companies that would be able to allow us, the towers, to have owner information the day that it's actually towed. In Atlanta, for example, it generally takes 2 or 3 weeks to get that owner information. So the statute allows notification the next business day after, but it's been delayed by that time because local law enforcement doesn't provide that information. So there are a lot of changes, but none of the changes affect any due process. So if a vehicle owner or a lien holder or a financial party wanted to have a hearing, then they would still have that access to the court. At that point, they would file for a hearing, pay court fees, and be allowed to have that hearing. As far as the auctions go, probably about 10% of vehicles that are being towed or abandoned. So these vehicles typically are sold for $200 and $300. The vehicle owner, the financial advisor, or the financial party, none of them want the vehicle. The insurance companies don't want the vehicle. So there's not vehicles that are, you know, nice new models that are running that are something that want to be sold, but it's those that have been already abandoned. So again, none of those due process issues change. It's just getting it under one house with the Department of Revenue.
Thank you. Any questions of the representative from towing company or Representative Ridley? Representative Prince.
Yes. So have we coordinated this with the Department of Revenue? I mean, is this going to require additional manpower, workers to handle this? Because it sounds like we're taking it out of one jurisdiction and sort of kind of putting it up under something else. So Has this been coordinated with the Department of Revenue?
We've had discussions with the Department of Revenue, and we feel like that in one hand, yes, it would be more manpower, but there's also a new revenue stream that would afford to the Department of Revenue for those additional services. Also, the Department of Revenue has a more centralized electronic process that could be implemented somewhere at some point, so hopefully manpower would not be as extent as it is throughout the courts of the entire state.
Okay, and the reason I ask that, I sit on the appropriations subcommittee for general government, and I did not see any, increases in manpower for the Department of Revenue, but I see we have the commissioner here, so I'm not sure if she's, but okay, thanks a lot. So based on what I understand, it has not been fully coordinated with the.
It has not been fully
Thank you.
coordinated. We've had conversations.
All right.
Representative Prince, we're gonna halt questions at this time and ask one who can speak directly to this, if she will make a comment, Commissioner Riley.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Thank you, Representative Prince, for raising that question. While we have had conversations with the interested parties, a concern that we would express is that this process has not been fiscally evaluated and a determination made on whether the department would need additional funds. We believe we would, because it would be a new program that we would have to administer. And as I've testified in other cases, we have the drive system that is being implemented as we speak, and it has not been contemplated to add this component to the drive system. So we wouldn't even be able to administer something like this until May or June of 2019, but additional funding and additional powers would need to be given to the department. We currently don't have the authority to convey titles and make it a court action to determine whether a title should be legally and lawfully transferred from one individual to another. So all of those things being said, there would need to be additional resources. Of course, the powers conveyed on the department, and of course, time for the department to be able to put this program into place.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any questions from the committee for Commissioner Riley?
My question was Representative Prince's question. I saw the commission, that's what I was gonna ask her.
And mine was, I saw it on line 432, $300 from $600, so they were increasing. I thought you was getting a little more money.
Thank you for that question, sir. We operate under the appropriations process, and any revenues that are inured on a program flow to the general fund and would have to be appropriated back to the department.
All right. Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Representative.
Yes, sir.
All right. This time we'll stand for a motion. Have a motion to pass. Have a second.
As a committee substitute.
As a committee substitute. Second. Motion dies for lack of second. Thank you. Representative Ridley, 761.
Check your button, the gray button on the back, make sure it's turned on.
All right. Mr. Chairman, I bring to you House Bill 761. This is a bill that we went through subcommittee on a while back and didn't take a vote. And I can't see because of that big pole right there. But if Commissioner Riley's still here, I would like to commend her and her department on the help that she gave me with this bill. And we come to agreement on it, and she removed the amendment that was priorly on it. And basically this bill right here comes off of House Bill 412 that we passed last year that had to do with the auto dealers having to go to the courthouse, or could no longer go to the courthouse. They had to use a third-party company to process their titles through. And so what this bill right here is going to do is if the dealers want to use the courthouse, then they're still able to process their titles through the courthouse. If not, then they can use the system as well.
Any questions from the committee? Representative Caldwell.
I have a question, Mr. Chairman, but I have a motion at some point for an amendment. When we get to that point,
We're at that point, sir.
I would move for an amendment. Sorry, I would ask for an amendment, Mr. Chairman, just to say that the effective date of this would be January 1 of 2019 instead of upon the signature of the governor or July of this year, to give the department time to implement this program and to get it up and working and whatever they might need to do.
All right, we have a motion to amend this bill to have an effective date of January 1, 2019. Do we have a second?
Second.
A motion and second. Representative Ridley, you have any problems with this?
Yeah, I do got a problem with that. I'm sorry. The problem we're having is the dealers are having a problem with the systems right now. And so if we put them off a year, then they're going to continue to have these problems till next January. And this was implemented in November the 15th of this year, and they only had 45 days to get in compliance with what the department, what 412 passed. So I don't see what, by putting it off till next year, how that's going to help our dealers out that's having problems right now. I've got plenty of emails and stuff, even got one from tax commissioner's office where one of these title systems, when they went to pay taxes, they're supposed to take out $1,503. They took out $15,300 out of his account, and that's been 10 days ago. So a lot of guys are having troubles with these systems. They've already had to swap 2 or 3 times from the 6 systems that was offered. They've had to go to 2 or 3 different systems to be able to process and do business.
That's my point.
So you want to have to keep on going for another?
No, I want to get the system fixed so they don't have that problem any longer.
Well, if they can go to the courthouse, though, that'll eliminate that system.
All right, we're going to call for a vote on the amendment. That's been.
I might ask a question. I'm trying to wrap my hands around this, and this might be, I might direct this to Ms. Riley, the Revenue Commissioner. Right now, the Gratis system is still in effect while y'all are building onto the Drive system. I remember back years ago when the Gratis system was put into place. That was supposedly the catch-all place that any and all could go to the courthouse, to the tax commissioner's office, to file in this new day of electronic transmittal. Then the bill last year, I think, sort of squirreled that up a little bit, because a lot of these used car dealers, and a lot of them are one-person operation and things like that. And a lot of these people are not versatile in the electronics. And then what we've done, we've added extra cost to them to say, you've got to go to a third-party administrator to do all of this, get them to do this work for you. And I think that's what we're getting around to, trying to fix that.
They're correct.
So at this point, a lot of those, and granted, a lot of the used car dealers have in fact gone to the third party, those that are probably a whole lot more
savvy.
I almost hate to use that word, technologically more advanced, but those that aren't, there's still a good many of those out there. So so right now under the current Gratis system, could they not still file this paperwork through that Gratis system as opposed? Is there still enough room on that while the Drive system is being perfected? And it would be.
Well, thank you.
I believe I asked the right question.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Lynn.
All right. We're going to take a vote on the amendment. All in favor of the amendment, say aye. Aye. Any opposed?
Opposed.
Okay, amendment fails. All right. We have a motion on the bill. Motion do pass. We have a second. I thought you did. You didn't make it. Have a motion and a second. All in favor of the bill, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Bill passes. Thank you. All right, we have one other item left that is a hearing only, and I'm just not trying to impose upon your time, but, Representative Teasley is going to give us, what is the bill number?
It's 862. And do you guys have a copy of that bill? Do you guys have a copy of the bill?
No.
Okay. All right. It's your pleasure. You ready
Go
for
ahead,
it?
Rick.
Okay.
Representative.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I bring before you House Bill 862, and I sent around both what I would call a back of the napkin fiscal note, as well as I sent you some charts or some data here. Basically, what 862 is aimed at doing is eliminating the charge for a specialty tag fee for an electric vehicle driver. The reason why I'm after that, someone asked why would you want to carve that out? As you look at the graph here or the data here, your electric vehicles currently pay this next year will pay in their tag renewal will be $214 in that range, and that is in line as if they paid an excise tax like an SUV. So, for instance, an SUV gets 15 miles to the gallon. They would pay approximately $214 in gasoline excise tax, whereas the electric vehicle is paying $214 just in tag renewal, having nothing to do with any additional taxes or fees that they're paying. And so currently, if you drive an electric vehicle and you also would like to have the specialty tag, which might give you additional privileges in an HOV lane, you would pay an additional $80 initially. I'm sorry, an additional $60 initially to have the tag created, and then your annual $35 renewal fee. And so we have seen our electric vehicle fleet, or the number of people driving electric vehicles, drop precipitously in the last 3 years for understandable reasons. We removed a generous tax credit, and we imposed, and I certainly agree with the concept of if you're not paying gasoline excise tax, then you need to pay for you using the road. So I'm okay with that. But at $214, it's a bit punitive. And so what I'm attempting to accomplish here with House Bill 862 is to encourage, if you are driving an electric vehicle and you're already paying a very high annual tag renewal, then as a state I believe we should waive the specialty tag fee. So that is what the bill aims to do, and I'd be happy to answer any questions. I have what I call I called it a back of the napkin fiscal note. We currently have, I think it's somewhere in the range of 12 or 13,000 electric vehicles that this could potentially apply to. Again, that number has been decreasing each year. But in the event that if the only people who were this applied to and they all got the specialty tag, that would be a fiscal note of $440,755 in terms of a fiscal note or a fiscal impact on the state. And again, I believe it is something that, as a public policy matter, would be appropriate for us to extend that as a way of encouraging people to drive electric vehicles.
Any questions of the presenter? Excuse me. Representative Prince.
Question is, specialty tags, that's, for lack of better words, that's a choice.
Correct. There are a number of electric vehicle drivers who choose not to get a specialty tag.
Okay, great.
And this would not require that they get one. This would just say if you want one and you've already paid your $215 this year, the state would not charge you to have a specialty tag.
And the 215, I think around that we required, that they're required to pay, was that not something that came out of House Bill 170 that we passed, and the reason being they're not using the gasoline, but they're still using our roads?
That's exactly correct. And so, and I don't disagree with the concept of having them pay more than, you know, if you drive a Honda Accord, your tag renewal is $20.
Right.
But you are paying, as a Honda Accord, you are paying excise tax every time you fill up your tank.
And also, if I want a specialty tag, i.e. a legislative tag or whatever, I pay additional $35.
That's correct.
Okay.
And so if you look at the chart there, if you were a hybrid vehicle, so let's say you drove, as a matter of fact, we'll use the Toyota Prius as it's specified there. A Toyota Prius pays $64.32 in excise tax. Whereas if you were driving a Nissan Leaf or a Kia Soul EV, you were paying $214 this next year, just for renewing your tag. So the Prius would pay $20 plus the $64, if you will, to have the privilege of driving your vehicle. So this is a desire to make it more equitable for those who are driving electric vehicles.
Which is a choice, right?
It is a choice, but you do not get a choice on whether or not you pay a tag fee each year.
No, of course, but to drive that vehicle.
That's correct. But to my point, we have seen, again, we had a very generous tax credit, and there was no additional excise tax. There was no extra tag fee before HB 170. Both the tax credit and the tag fee were the tax credit was eliminated and the tag fee was implemented. So we had a very, very robust electric vehicle market in 2015, and we have seen a precipitous decline in that. And so this is, again, as a way of saying, as a matter of public policy, if you are going to drive an electric vehicle, which we believe produces less carbon emission, we should encourage you to, we want to affirm that choice by saying we don't believe you ought to pay $215 for a tag fee, and if you want the privilege to drive in the HOV lane, an additional $60 plus $35 each year.
Representative Jones.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Representative Teasley. What was the revenue generated by the new tax on the electric vehicles as part of HB 170? How much revenue was generated? Do you have any idea?
I have no idea.
I couldn't
how to
find
answer.
it on your chart. What I was trying to get at is what's perhaps the offset of revenue increase by virtue of that versus the revenue lost by the reduction or elimination of the specialty tag fee.
Right. So the elimination of the specialty tag fee would be a cost to the state in the amount of approximately $440,000 if all things remain the same. And we have certainly had a dramatic increase in revenue to the state as a result of the annual tag fee. So the electric vehicle driver would still be paying well above what a Honda Accord driver would be paying.
Well, let me answer the question I asked, if I might, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Barr here did a quick calculation. He said we generated about $2.5 million by virtue of the additional fee charged to the electric vehicles. And he got that by taking the number of vehicles registered on your chart.
13, I did 12,500.
Yep, so about $2.5 million.
Okay.
Okay, I was just curious what the offset were. Okay, thank you.
So, okay, yeah. Thank you.
Okay. All right. Anything else? Thank you,
I
Representative.
appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.
All right. We stand adjourned.